And we're back with apologies. We had to take a few weeks off, do some travel, a few industry conferences, Alice, AHOA, sell a few hotels, can't forget our day job. And we are back with a great guest, Ali Maalouf, CEO of Americas, IHG. We're gonna get his thoughts on the current environment of the travel industry, find out what he's learned from his colleagues at the U.S. Travel Association, and most importantly, what he's hearing from the IHG owners and franchisees. Thanks for joining. Ali, thank you for joining me today. I appreciate it. It's good to see you at Alice, by the way. Nice to be back out on the road, traveling for both of us, feeling like some sense of normalcy in our industry, right? Yeah. Even though it was July in LA, which is less than ideal. But great to see you. Thanks for coming on. I just wanted to catch up and find out where your thought is on the world. Everybody wants to know where we headed. What are things looking like? Maybe I should start with where are you today? Tell me you're in the office. And what do corporate IHG headquarters look like these days compared to 18 months ago?
Well, first, our corporate office has really been open since last year and on a light attendance basis, but we've been officially open on light attendance basis. And of course, you know, we're always looking at what to do next to keep our employees safe and our visitors safe. But today, I'm in the Intercontinental Wharf Hotel in Washington, D.C., right on the bank of the Potomac River. 278 rooms, beautiful property, rooftop bar, Scott Gerber bar, great Kevin Tien Vietnamese restaurant on the main floor, voted by Condé Nast the best hotel in Washington, D.C. I mean, just a great place to be. And, you know, I'd like to work out of hotels even throughout this crisis. When we were mostly working from home, I'd get out of home and work out of hotel 2-3 times a week just to change the environment and actually to be close to our colleagues, close to the teams, close to the business. You know, they always had to go to work. We could do this a lot. They never could do this. And, you know, we were making a lot of plans to keep them safe and our colleagues safe and our visitors safe, but you have to get on property to see if it's actually working. But it's also more fun to be in a property.
So what are you learning? So one, beautiful property. So cheers. I like it when people pick great places to host these calls. But tell me what is happening, feet on the ground there. Pick on that hotel in DC. How's business? What are you hearing?
Well, look, our weekends are very strong. I mean, I was down here for dinner, I think just 10 days ago with my wife and one of my 3 boys. And they told me, I checked in with the staff, they told me that they were 100% for the weekend. Weekdays have been ramping up. We're starting to get some groups, some weddings, some activities. I mean, of course, like we know we're not through COVID entirely. The daily news reminds us of that, but we're on the right trajectory. People's confidence in travel has been returning. So even urban hotels like this one are starting to see some pickup. This hotel benefits from being in a terrific entertainment location too, right on the banks of the Potomac River. Lots of great restaurants and retail right in front of it, but still close to the center of power and center of government. And so you can do both. In general, look, Teague, we're not through this, but I think we're in the right direction to get through COVID and to get out of COVID. You had last year, which was the depth of the crisis. How do we manage this? Then we had the scientific breakthroughs. Vaccines fundamentally altered the trajectory of COVID, didn't crush it completely, but altered the trajectory. And where you see vaccination rates being high, you see lower government restrictions, lower concerns about travel, more travel. I mean, you saw the data, July, US industry hit record RevPAR, not record for the year, but record ever. That shows you that there is confidence in travel where people feel safe doing it.
Interesting. So it is funny you say that because we were starting to get nervous in third and fourth quarter, right? That things were going to slow down, Delta variant, et cetera. But I actually think I'm going to pick up on you. We are still hearing some pockets of tremendous strength, even into September and October. So not weakness. And fundamentally, I think people are having a little more patience today, at least our investors are having a little more patience. Yeah, even if it's not Labor Day when this is all over, if it's next year, that's okay. We're headed the right direction. We'll get through this. Time is on our friend. We're going to do just fine. And the more we see records being broken, RevPAR and profits, the like, helps give people confidence.
Look, I agree. I can't tell you what September, October will be like, what this next quarter will be like. I hope that it is a time of much lower cases, much higher vaccinations, not just in the US, but around the world, so everybody can get through this. But this I do know, we'll make a higher high as an industry because people's desire to travel, leisure and business, has proven to be irrepressible. I think we were all surprised by the strong bounce back this summer. And look, I've traveled extensively since May, since June. I've traveled extensively around the country, not just LA, but Minneapolis, Atlanta, New York, Miami. I was in Italy for a week on family trip in June. I just spent a week on business in the Dominican Republic last week. I see leisure travelers, but I see also quite a few business travelers. And yet, yes, we still have some COVID to get through, no question. We have more vaccinations to deliver. We have more therapeutics coming. We have boosters coming. So we got to gut our way through this. But if you're thinking beyond the next quarter, if you're a real estate investor, hotel investor, a brand company or a property owner, or somebody that is working across both like you are, what really matters, what do the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years, 10 years look like? And I think we've proven that people love to travel. They need and want to stay in hotels when they travel. And our industry's fundamentals have been interrupted last year. Yes, interrupted severely, but not altered.
Juan, sounds like you're single-handedly keeping our industry afloat. So cheers for that. But that made me think, you're on the chair of the U.S. Travel Association. So what are you hearing? What are you hearing from that? Whether it's international or our federal government trying to help, what are you hearing as chair of that association?
Yeah. Well, I'm chair of the CEO Roundtable of the U.S. Travel Association. Right. Christine Duffy, president of Carnival, is chair of the association. In fact, she and I just met in Miami on my way to Dominican Republic last week, and we had a great time together, catching up, seeing what they're doing, what we're doing. A lot of analogies between the cruise industry and our industry too. Look, we've been focused in U.S. travel really on 3 things. First is supporting the travel and tourism industry in the United States. 1 out of 10 jobs, almost 8% of GDP depends on tourism and travel in the United States. So supporting that industry. Last year, we and HLA and other hotel industry associations, we brought PPP loans by working with government, EIDL loans, tax relief. And we're still working on more. You saw last week, the GSA announced that they're going to freeze per diem rates at 2019 rates for 2021 and 2022. That's very important for recovering hotels, not to get locked into the 2020 rates, which were artificially depressed. The second thing we have been working on, are just safe protocols across all travel industry. How do we bring back travel safely? What are the right protocols for hotels, for airlines, for conventions? And how do we advocate with local government to make sure that those guidelines are clear, but also simple for people to follow? And we've seen travel resume with governments giving clear guidance and states giving clear guidance. The third thing is international travel. That's been delayed, of course. A lot of the protocols that were put in place and regulations were put in place last year when COVID was raging everywhere and there were no cures or vaccines made sense at the time. We're working now with the US government and other governments to make sure that there's lifting of some of these restrictions. We've seen Europe open up to US travelers if you're vaccinated, in fact, or if you test negative. I went to Italy for a week with my family by presenting negative tests on the way out and taking one on the way in and filling out a lot of forms. We had a wonderful time. So you can travel safely internationally with some protocols. So we're working with the US government to open up that travel internationally. First, let's say with the UK, where they have high vaccination rates, other European countries, Canada in the future. It's good for US business. It's also good for our advocacy around our world and our leadership around the world.
Yeah, we can't keep tight. We got to open up. People want to moving about. That's the human spirit, right? So we got to go and cheers. Thank you for doing what you're doing to get all that open, because we need it. We need that international traveler here. We need to be able to go there. We just need to get things open.
Now I'll say we do that from an industry perspective. As ISG, 70% or more of our hotels in the United States are non-urban. 95% of our demand is domestic. You saw the July numbers from the industry, record RevPAR. So it's not really getting in the way of our business recovery right now, although we'd like that international travel for the gateway cities. But we actually think it's good for the industry, good for the economy in total, and good for our relations around the world, good for our leadership around the world to open that up. I don't think it's ever happened in history, Teague, where borders have been closed across so many nations for so long, not even in World War I or World War II. it's quite unprecedented.
How are we, in your opinion, how are we doing compared to other countries, Europe and Asia and other places?
We should feel good, frankly, about, I'd call it the miracle of our medical innovation that brought 3 approved vaccines within a year, right? Within a year. Other countries have developed vaccines too, which is remarkable. But in the US alone, we brought 3 approved vaccines within the year that have brought great confidence to the economy, and not just to our sector, but to the economy in general. I mean, I was meeting with the cruise line industry leaders in Miami on my way to Dominican Republic last week. I mentioned to you, imagine what their business would be like without vaccines. They're cruising again under CDC guidance that they have to have 95% of their passengers vaccinated. Without a vaccine, they couldn't even get started. These are high capital intensive, indebted businesses that really need to get started again. And they're doing it safely again. So we should feel good about that and be grateful to the scientific advances. We should be grateful, frankly, to our people. People in hotels, our frontline workers, our first responders, our medical workers, hospital workers that pulled through so many people. Unfortunately, too many did not make it through COVID, but so many survived and did better because of our frontline workers and medical workers and hospital workers. We should be grateful for them. We're now, where are we? Maybe 62% of the adult population fully vaccinated. There's more work to do. I'm pleased to see the vaccination rates start to tick up again in the country. That's important. We all have to do our part to encourage and inform people to take the vaccine. It's a much better situation to be than to not be vaccinated. We know that with the vaccine, the likelihood of hospitalization or even worse is very, very small. Nothing's ever zero, but we know it's very, very small. So we should continue to encourage it. So we should feel good about the progress we made, but we've been learning from a disease that's really never struck the world. And so not everything could have been perfect, but have we made a lot of progress? Obviously we have.
You talk about the great things happening domestically. Tell me what you're hearing from your franchisees, from the ownership community. What are you hearing at the granular level?
I mean, look, clearly hotel owners had a very rough year, and it's still not over for many of them, right? When you have the fixed cost of property, of debt service, of payroll, of real estate taxes, and you've got either your life savings as a family business, which many of our owners are in our mainstream hotels like Holiday Inn, Holiday Inn Express, Staybridge Suites, Candlewood Suites, or you're even an institution, private equity fund or sovereign fund or public REIT. I mean, they felt a really big hit from it, and we recognized, and we did our best to help them through last year with fee relief, government assistance, relaxed standards, and we continue much of that today. What we're hearing from today is clearly they're in a much better place. When we're getting to the RevPAR levels that we reached this summer, and hopefully a lot of that will continue into the fourth quarter, that just means more revenue to the hotel and therefore more cash available to repay some of the debt, catch up on that forbearance, start to think forward. I'd say we started the year with many of them still concerned about survival. Now it's more about how quickly can I recover? How quickly can we get back to where we got back to versus just survival? So that's already a vast improvement. And all of our focus right now is working with them to capture as much business into the hotels, to do it profitably while still meeting great customer expectations. We launched a recovery series in May. We saw this coming in the spring. You know, while many of our owners were still focused on survival, you know, we met with them and we said, look, folks, it's probably time to get on offense from defense, right? Last year was exceptional, unprecedented. I think the biggest risk for 2021 is missing the opportunity of a strong summer. So let's make sure we're staffed, that we're trained, that we're ready to welcome the waves of guests that are going to start in spring break. And sure enough, as soon as spring break started, you saw the waves of people, and then it continued through the summer. So we really worked hard. We had what we called it a recovery series of 12 different 15-minute segments, all virtual. And we rolled it out, and we had 2,000 owners and hotel GMs attend across managed and franchise hotels. And they did a terrific job really training their hotel staff to be prepared. We know they're understaffed out there today, that there are some staffing challenges. But part of leadership is not just fighting the fire that you're in today, but it's thinking forward and saying, okay, what is the next phase? So we're ready for the next phase and not always reactive. And looking ahead and saying, with some risk, I think 2020, the biggest risk was the downside. 2021, the biggest risk was missing the upside. And I think we helped them capture as much of it this summer. So they're feeling a bit better. Obviously still a little bit concerned what's happening for the fourth quarter, but we're hoping for the best.
All right. So what does 22 look like?
We don't make predictions, Atik. I know you're going to keep trying to get us on the guidance. As a company, we've never given guidance as a policy. But I'll also say we take a longer term view, and I think our owners do too. No one could have guessed what 2020 looked like. Everybody was then wrong about 2021. So why play that, unlikely success game? What I would say though, the fundamentals of the industry are unaltered. And what are they? GDP growth in the US and around the world. That stalled for a little bit, has resumed. In fact, resumed quite strongly in the US and also in Asia and recovering in Europe. Strong. The second factor after GDP growth is population growth. That really never stopped, and that continues. And as GDP growth coincides with population growth in our major markets, which are Americas, Europe, China, you get wealth creation for families and wealth creation for businesses that then get spent on travel. And so those fundamentals have been interrupted by the pandemic. They have not been altered by the pandemic. They have not been eliminated by the pandemic. It really did feel bad, right? But as soon as we saw people's ability to travel and confidence in travel return, we saw surges of travel. So we know that the fundamentals have been altered. And our investments in brands and our owners' investments in hotels are not for a quarter, for a year. So we try to focus on the long term. We're confident in the long term. But we're observant of the short term, making sure that we're putting the measures in place so we and our owners can be successful in 21 and 22.
So I want to stay on this. I want to pick on sort of the future, and the business traveler is really what I'm focused on right now. So what do you think, and maybe it's IHG's attitude towards its own employees and its own people, but are corporations going to continue? I mean, they had let people start to travel. That was great. And now you're starting to see some of the Delta variant, away, you got to lock down. Maybe it's personal decisions as much as corporate decisions. Oh, I'm not comfortable traveling. I'm not comfortable going to that convention. I do think it's all temporary. I think by next year, all this is going to be behind us. Everyone I talk to feels that way. I believe it. But in the short term, though, it's a little bit, talk to me about the business traveler and what do you think their mindset is and what's their future?
I think we should break. There are many components of the business travel, many segments. I think we tend to lump all business travelers into one segment. There's one significant segment of business traveler that never stopped traveling during the pandemic. That's because their businesses required them to travel. If you set aside our travel industry, hotels, airlines, cruise ships, restaurants, which were the hardest hit, right? Other industries, good for them, did really well. Technology, transportation, ex-airlines, right? Construction, can't build homes fast enough, right? Right now in this country. Entertainment, medical, pharmaceutical, financial services. You start to add up all these, and many of these are industries, manufacturing. Many of these are industries that need to move people and product to certain places. They're not the glamorous, business first class trip, New York, LA for a 2-hour meeting and fly back. That professional set, consultants, bankers, important customers of ours, yeah, they stayed home for the most part and went virtual. But when you have a construction boom and you got to deliver appliances and lumber and roofing to a job site, you're not doing that over a platform like this, right? You got to get in a truck, you got to stay at Holland Express along the way and on the way back, and you got to drop off that load. Somebody's got to get on site and get it built. If you're in the energy business, and we've seen energy prices come back pretty strong. So if you're in Texas, Dakota, Colorado, you're having to go and run that oil operation or gas operation, that energy operation. If you're in pharmaceutical or you're in medical, you have to move equipment around. So there's a whole, and probably the biggest business travel segment, the industrial manufacturing, set that kept moving. And that sustained our brands. Our extended stay brands, Candlewood Suites and Staybridge Suites, I don't think went below 60% occupancy throughout the whole pandemic. And they were at 80 in June. So that tells you that there's one whole segment of industry that kept traveling with safe protocols, masks, distancing, everything that we did in hotels to make them safe. Then you have sort of your professional consultant, banker, you and I, who had the fortune of being able to work remotely. Those started coming back. We saw them on the road. Many corporations told us that they were starting to have in-person meetings. We saw some conventions happen. Your conference happened in Atlanta, right? Happened safely. Alice happened safely. Will there be some that take a pause? That's likely. We don't know as the news flow and the case flow, goes up and down. But we know that the trajectory is to punch through it with strong vaccination and increased confidence. We know what the destination is. There could be some turbulence along the way, but we know that both business travelers on the professional side and certainly the industrial side, those men and women never stop moving.
So that was great. You answered my question. I was thinking, what brands did you learn performed the best in the pandemic? Holiday Express, Candlewood, all the easy makes sense, right? And sort of the leisure drive to leisure markets and resorts and sort of the like probably did the best. I wonder where what you see is sort of the future, like where is it going? What do you see, which brands you see performing the best? And then I'll come back and ask, as our industry, how do you think we're going to change? How do you see brands evolving in 3-5+ years?
Look, we have a broad brand portfolio. We just announced a new upper upscale collection brand, a couple of weeks ago with our half-year results. More on that very soon. Stay tuned, my friends. We're very excited about that. I'll tell you, look, all of our brands really surprised us in some cases. One sort of a limited service brand surprised us in their resilience. And they have a long history, really, and a lot of recognition. I mean, Holiday Inn Express this year reaches its 30th anniversary, and its 3,000th hotel is opening this year. So that's 3,000 hotels in 30 years. That's basically 100 a year opening around the world. I think almost 2,500 here in the Americas. A phenomenal machine that people are really attached to. That legacy matters. I'm sitting in the Intercontinental Wharf in Washington, D.C. today. Intercontinental celebrates its 75th year anniversary this year. 75 years, over 200 hotels open, almost 75 under development, which when you look at that sort of 1/3 ratio, tells you the brand is still relevant. When you got 1/3 under development of what's already open, the largest luxury brand in the world at 200, another plus or minus 75 under development around the world with some great ones in the US. I mean, in the middle of the pandemic, the new Intercontinental luxury hotel downtown Bellevue got a massive financing package that you read about, $700 million financing package for that whole luxury residential retail project. Strength of the brand, strength of development, strength of the developer partner that we have up there. We inked a deal to open Intercontinental in San Antonio, was announced recently this year. So that brand continues to grow. So we were actually very pleased with the performance and the interest of our brands. Although I'll tell you, I mean, like we all hit record lows, right, last year across the board. But when you look at the trust that guests and owners showed in our brands, not just in the Americas, but around the world, that was really reinforcing to us. It showed us that in the depth of the worst crisis the industry had, guests still had confidence in our brands when they came back to travel across the range from luxury to limited service. And owners still had trust in our brands. I mean, just in the first half of this year, we opened a hotel every working day. So you had 180 calendar days, maybe 120 working days. We opened about 120, 130 hotels. We signed 200 hotels, so more than one a calendar day as we're recovering from a pandemic. And so I think that shows the deep trust that our owners have in our brands. And that's very gratifying. We're very grateful for that.
And that's impressive. Sorry, it just is. And I agree with you. It's a hats off to the development community, as crazy or brilliant as they may be in our space. And we all know who we're talking about. So cheers to them. So tell me, what can you tell me about the new brand? I'm curious. And why did we feel we needed to add that to our repertoire?
Look, I think if you look in our portfolio, we've been very thoughtful and deliberate in the introduction of new brands. We have a portfolio of existing brands that are tried and true, highly trusted. We just mentioned them, plus Crowne Plaza, Kimpton Hotels and Restaurant that we acquired 6 years ago. Deeply trusted brands that have a meaning, a purpose. Many of them started by people. Juan Trippe started Intercontinental, a real person whose legacy runs through the brand. Bill Kimpton, a person whose personality is infused in the brand. Kemmons Wilson, whose personality and life was infused in Holiday Inn. So these are brands that meant and still mean a lot to people today and going into the future. But we look at our portfolio and see demand from two people, from customers that want more upper upscale portfolio brands in IHG. They want to stay at more upper upscale with IHG, but they still want the distinctiveness of an independent feel and local feel of a property. And we have owners who wanted to develop or own independent brands or independent properties that have their own personality, but still affiliate with a strong brand family like IHG. And so we saw that we didn't have that offering. Like we had Voco, which was upscale conversion. Then we had Kimpton, which was, restaurant, bar, strong identity. We had Intercontinental, which was, the largest luxury brand in the world. But we did not have somewhere for strong personality brands that had their own identity to affiliate with us at the upper upscale level. So we're just meeting the needs of owners and guests. That's really where we converge to say, okay, we're going to introduce a brand, not because, well, there's a conference coming, folks, let's get together and get a brand ready.
I like that style strategy better than the other one. So let's talk operations and sort of wrapping up. But what do you think you learned from an operations standpoint? I mean, there were some efficiencies that we were able to learn, right? Cut some of the amenities, maybe some of the housekeeping. What do you think stick with us long term? And what do you think are short term?
Yeah, I mean, I put it into three categories. The first category are, look, all of us in this industry, and even in every travel sector, reduced a lot of amenities and services just for safety, just for contact, just because we couldn't have even enough staff there to do it. Now, getting past the pandemic, as travelers have returned and owners are able to sustain operations, we put sort of the services in three areas. Some that are really intrinsic to the travel experience, our guests love and need, that we had suspended, that we're bringing back, like our beloved Holiday Inn Express and Staybridge Suites breakfast buffet. We altered it a little bit, refined it a little bit, but that is truly intrinsic to those brands. Guests want it and need it. It makes a big difference in the value equation. So that's coming back. Then the second bucket are ones who come back, but perhaps modified. Housekeeping for limited service hotels. Can we make it more tailored to guest needs than a simple approach across the board, no matter what you need, right? That meets the needs of the guest and also helps owners sustain operations when it's very hard to staff right now. Can we find a modified solution that meets guest needs and owner needs? And the third one are things that probably have no sense to come back. If you look at a lot of the collateral and sometimes clutter that we had in rooms that took up time from staff to change, to move, to re-put in, did the guests really care about all that collateral, all that paper, all that plastic that we removed? I'd say some of that probably doesn't come back into the room. So those are the three areas. We've made some decisions along the way. We'll continue to work with our owners to make different decisions along the way that meet guest expectations, but also strengthen owner returns.
We know you mentioned staffing. We know that's a major problem everywhere. How long do you think that continues, and how does it work itself out?
Staffing was tight, to be fair, before the pandemic. A combination of strong demand, not just across our industry, but across other industries that are service oriented. Aging of the population, diminishing birth rate, right? We saw this year, was it this year, the first year that the US average, population shrank a little bit, right? Average age sort of declined a little bit. So, and tighter immigration. You put the three things together, and we're facing a little bit of tightness on labor before COVID. This has exacerbated it. And now with a stronger economy coming out of COVID and people that left the industry that have found gainful employment elsewhere, some of them will come back because it's a great industry. Some of them are pretty busy doing what they're doing. You have to be realistic. They probably don't come back in the short term. So I think, yes, the government programs that go into next month have had some effect. I don't think that's the only thing. I think we're going to be dealing with some labor constraints for some time. That's why we're thinking more long-term about the changes that we make to meet guest expectations and also owner returns.
So we're a people industry, right? All the things we've known.
Yeah.
We're only as good as our people at all levels, right? The joy, the reason we're all in hospitality, from top to bottom. I'll give you credit as the leader. I think you've done a great job with IHG. I think your people, I hear that all the time from your people, up and down. So cheers to you. We need more good leaders in our industry. Thank you for continuing to be there. And I don't know if you have any comments, all the stuff going forward. I know IHG does a great job on sustainability and carbon and social and all the stuff. You guys are doing all the right moves. So kudos to you.
Look, it's clearly something that's been part of our culture, Teague, and frankly, people expect that. Our customers, especially our corporate customers, expect commitments and performance on sustainability and responsible behavior. Our guests expect it to. Our leisure guests are asking us about it. Our owners want solutions that are effective but help them comply with the inevitable regulation that's coming, not just in the US, but around the world. And our colleagues, our team members, want to feel like they're part of a business that operates responsibly. So we have made some significant commitments, for example, for significant carbon reduction measured and tracked over the next few years that we disclose. We've committed to near zero carbon footprint for new builds in our limited service hotels by 2030. We're working on water and waste reduction. We've committed to improve the lives of 30 million people around the world through education, through training, through disaster relief. Look, it's happening right now. I mean, if you look at what's happening in the US, we got wildfires in the West, hurricanes in the East, a sad but fast return of refugees from Afghanistan. And our hotels are working across all those fronts to comfort the people through these events. So we're operating responsibly in our markets as a fundamental part of our culture. We made some serious commitments to that. It's a people business beyond that, Teague. It's a people business with our owners. And one thing that I do regularly, weekly, is sit down and talk with our owners. I mean, the billions and billions of dollars that they invest to grow brands, our brands in particular, around the world, is something we're deeply grateful for. And we're always listening to them to see how we can make sure that the trust they're putting into our brands is returned into strong investment returns for them. I'm meeting and having dinner with 6 or 7 of them tonight here at the hotel. I try to do that everywhere I go. I was in Dominican Republic last week, met with half a dozen of our owners in the market, existing and prospective owners. You learn so much from them, from every market that you go to. They are a driving force in that business, driving force of your business too, of course.
So, and I mean this, Ellie, thank you for everything you're doing. Thanks for your U.S. Travel Association. Thanks for your H&LA helping Chip Rogers. Thanks for being the leader. You got to have these leaders in the industry. Thanks for being a mouthpiece for us here in Washington, D.C. right now. Thank you for all of that. And I mean that. Thank you. And it was great to see you and Keith and Joel all at Alice. Yeah, I'm ready for the next one.
We are too. Teague, great to spend time with you. Thank you for being a leader in the industry yourself and making a big difference. Thank you for staging the first comeback conference this year and breaking through the anxiety that people had about conferences, and for facilitating the economic health and prosperity of so many owners by arranging the capital in many different ways for them. Without leaders like you in the industry, that essential capital that drives this industry would not be present. And when you go to parts of the world where this industry doesn't prosper as much, it's mainly because there's not the access to capital. So thank you for what you do.
You're welcome. And I enjoyed, I mean, we're people, and we have the best people in this industry. Nice that we have capital. Nice that we have a place where people can that wants to attract capital. But I believe in our people. So, Ellie, thank you very much for the time. Cheers to you and your team and everything you're doing. And let's stay in touch.
All the best to you and your team. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Ellie.